Good morning. You know, I used to have this rule that you never go back from where you came from. Don't go back from whence you came, right? Always go forward, forward looking. And I mean that like relationships, don't get back with your ex. Jobs, don't go back to your old job. Same as getting back with your ex, right? What bothered you the first time is going to be there. But as I've reflected more and more on that, I've started to realize that there's something so beautiful in being shown that how we think things are isn't right, and being shown that we're wrong. There's something, and people hate that word. Really, everybody loves to be right now because we have a lot of righteousness going on, a lot of self-righteousness going on. And we think to feel right, I think we have that confused with feeling happy. But I will tell you, as someone who's wrong a lot, the more that life shows me a new way of looking at something in a way I couldn't see it before, the more whole I feel. It's a very interesting thing. And so I started to realize that in every great hero's journey, there's always a returning back from where you came from. I mean, that's where the phrase comes from, right? Back from whence you came. There's a piece of it that, whether it's the alchemist or the prodigal son or any heroic journey out there has this sort of the hero sort of gets orphaned and cut off from everything that they knew and dumped into these various worlds it has to overcome, the underworld, and, find out who they are. And basically, even King Arthur, they did a great job with it in the last movie with the dude from the dude from Thor. I was just reading about thorns, in fairness. But anyway, and then once they realize who they are and their divine roots, if you will, or in that case, he was actually royalty, or there's sort of always this uncovering of our true lineage or who we really are, our real identity is discovered out in the world. And then there's a returning home. That's always a piece of it. And I think obviously I believe, an allegory for what we're doing here on earth. We're divine. We sort of left our home. We've become physical, forgot what we were, and we're sort of remembering. And someone who completely remembers their divine lineage, like say Jesus, will actually ascend and return to it while alive, is this idea of sort of this remembering and it being this beautiful process. But remembering is a fun part, but you have to forget to remember, and forgetting isn't always so fun, but it's the process of rediscovery that is so invigorating. And so I'm beginning to realize that this year, I think for me, is going to be a lot about going back in new ways. And there's a lot of layers to it. You can think you had this journey home and then it grows legs and the journey expands. It's always expanding. And that's so delightful. But I started my new job on Monday, but it's not really a new job. It's somewhere I worked before. So kind of broke my own rule here. But oddly enough, this place, I'm realizing, has caused me to see the error of my ways in a few ways. I actually had a rule that you never date anyone you work with. And I never had any kind of romantic relationship with anyone in a workplace for many years until I worked here, and that's where I met my husband. So I had to laugh at myself then, and how judgmental I'd been of anyone who dated in the workplace. And then I got to do it, and I got to be seen that I was wrong, but I became more humble. My view expanded in that, and I felt more whole. So there's something about, I think, it's probably giving up our ego and accepting a little humility. More and more humility, and that gets easier and easier, but there's something in that feels whole. And I think that's because of the split between our minds. We have our ego mind, our physical mind, the thing that thinks we're just a body and we're gonna die, and our value is based on how we look and what we weigh and how old we are, and or my divine mind that knows that I'm something far beyond this physical being. This is just a temporary sort of game that I'm playing, and we're all friends and we all love each other. And we exist in an environment, our real reality, if you will, is not this physical place, but this sort of pure love, divine space of perfection. And we're just doing this game to kind of expand that space and also to know our individuality. Because when you're vibrational, there is no separation, there's no space, and there's no time. So everything is kind of glommed together. When you come down here to this sort of expanded space-time reality, as Abraham calls it, but those are both expansions of things. There's sort of this splitting of like eternity would be time as wholeness. But if you add space to eternity, it becomes time. And obviously, if we're all collapsed on each other in some sort of vibrational thing where there isn't any space, so it's sort of very difficult for us to imagine what that's like. But everything's kind of connected together. When you come here, we get to each have our own vessel and get to know our own personal important preferences. But something in that of what we experience in contrast here expands the other side. And so there's always this relationship and asking, anyway, this place I've worked before has obviously had me face my own limited thinking in certain areas. And so I ended up reaching out to them, and when I was sort of experiencing my contrast at my last job, and I'm back there and I'm really happy about it. It feels so good. I'm so excited to be there. I love everybody there, and I'm learning this power and going back to where you were with new perspective. I go back different than I was before, with an ability to see things in a new way. And I think that's going to be a little bit of the theme of this year. I don't know how your year is kind of feeling, but we have our honeymoon in March. Our honeymoon, I mean, we got married a year and a half ago, but we waited. And I'm going back to Florida. My parents now moved there, and my family's down there, so we're going down there to see them before we get on the boat, because the cruise leaves from there. We're having like a little wedding reception, because we didn't really have a wedding. We just did it ourselves, so we get to have a little party. But I used to live down in Florida, and I haven't been back to the east side of Florida, down in Fort Lauderdale area, Miami area, in 6 years. When I left, and I had this very sad, I left in a lot of pain, a very fractured person. Some very sad things had happened, and I left, and I thought I'd be right back, and I haven't been back in 6 years. And so I'm going to get to go sort of see all these things, all these places I was, and who I was, and see how it's changed, and probably see a lot of people. So there's sort of this coming home happening at this first quarter of the year, and feeling this sensation of home for the first time. I also have a home and a family that feels so good. So I don't know, there's sort of this process that's happening that's really fun. And I get to go on an Abraham cruise, so it doesn't get much better than that, right? But anyway, I just wanted to share for a minute about kind of how my year is stacking up. And I was thinking a lot about this. This is also from the Vortex by Abraham, and it was saying, because I'm really learning to fine tune this stuff more about how I feel and how it impacts what's coming, and passing through sort of this in-between phase of shifting how we're doing life, and kind of the initial and moving into really using this as a tool and accessing it and living it in a new way. So this part says, is your friend harassing you into expansion? So when you feel elation, it means you've expanded. And in this moment of thought, you went with the expansion. When you feel love, it means that you've expanded. And in this moment of thought, you've gone with the thought of love. We don't think about how we are here generating expansion on the other side, that when something happens here, you know, Abraham says it all the time, we're in your vortex. It's great here. Like, spirit is living in the sort of heaven that we create through our experience here. And our experience here, especially the contrast, you know, it's the same as when the Bible says, you know, when you're suffering and giving, you're building up riches in heaven. I think it's the same metaphor. We don't realize that when we're living contrast, we are serving all that is and in expanding this beautiful place where they all exist. We need to let more in here, though. See, we're believing the contrast, the negativity as reality, and confusing it with what we are infusing with our power. Our minds are powerful. We're creative. It's not that our minds are powerful. Let me reframe that. Our minds are what directs the force that creates worlds. In other words, God. We're that focusing mechanism, and we're a piece of that. There's like a relationship there. So God is expanding because of our willingness to come here and be here. But we're the ones that are blocking off more of that heaven flowing into earth. So earth can be heaven, earth can be hell. And so the more we learn to use this to go with the expansion and not have spirit expand and we stay limited, is going to be our ability to flourish. And you know, at least this is, you know, the rules as I have discovered for me that work for me, that I'm living now. When you feel interest, when you feel excited, when you feel passion, you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, that means you've expanded. And in this moment, you're not doing the thing that you often do that is keeping you from going and being with who you really are. But if any moment you feel frustration or anger or fear, and if you feel powerless, if you feel those negative emotions that feel so awful to you, all that means is that in that moment, you've got something going on in your mind. You're probably talking about it. You're probably blogging about it or vlogging about it. I guess that was the thing. You've got something going on in your mind where you are not anywhere near the vicinity of who you really are. And the negative emotion that you feel is your indication of separation. Now, separation is too strong a word, but we want to get your attention with it. When you feel negative emotion, it simply means you're not keeping up with you. And over the last few months, I've been feeling that and getting really frustrated with myself. And I realized the frustration with me focusing on the negative, complaining, or, just constantly talking about what I don't want. I started to get really frustrated with myself, and that got me down. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm attracting badly. And you kind of, go into this downward spiral. But I started to realize that level of frustration myself was new. And that's creating a new discipline and a new balance that, of course, is still going to ebb and flow. But I'm understanding that it's expanding me in a way that I'm asking more and more for new focus, for new strength to focus in a new way. I want to let go of that stuff that isn't serving me. And, we'll finish with this. So it says, now there are some important things to know that you see, if life wasn't causing you to expand, there'd be nothing to keep up with. And you say, yes, exactly my point. If contrast were not abounding, then I wouldn't expand. And if I didn't expand, then I wouldn't have to go. I could just sit on my stump. And we say no chance, because you cannot cease to be standing in the middle of a buffet of choices, which is causing you to constantly expand. We are all eternally focused beings, which means you are selfishly focused, and we cannot help at all levels of our being, even cellular levels, to continue to ask for improvement, ask for improvement, ask for improvement. And you see, it's sort of tricky. We see how you might complain, but it goes this way. If it weren't for the contrast, you couldn't ask for the improvement. But the very contrast that is responsible for the improvement is the contrast that you use as your excuse not to go. It's like you got a friend who's harassing you into expansion. This friend's been giving you a grief for a long time, and you can't shake loose of them because all you do is talk about them, and law of attraction won't let you. So even if you can remove yourself from that friend by moving across the world, another one takes that friend's place. Because when something is active in your vibration, the law of attraction just brings it. Same with a job, same with family issues, same with money issues, like it's all the same. We're focused on it and constantly yapping about it. But that's also causing us to expand. And that's where we get to enjoy and have patience with ourselves in the expansion and the contrast, because it's part of it. That's what we're here to do. Right? So this friend is responsible for your expansion. They're driving you crazy, and you expand and you expand, complaining and complaining about them. But here's the funny part. If you're like most people, you're now using this friend and this contrasting experience as your excuse not to keep up with the expansion that the friend caused you to have. That's why you're so mad at them. That's why I get so caught up in my negativity about my job. And it's me focusing on it that's keeping it there. That's why everything seems to be this person's fault. And haven't you noticed that when you've got that sort of thing going on, and almost everybody does to some degree, for a while it's that person, then it's that person, then it's that person. In other words, it seems like there's always something that you're using as your current excuse to not let yourself feel good. It's like, if I could just wrestle this one rascal to the ground and kill him, then in the absence of rascaldom, I would feel good. It's so brilliant. And we say you can't rid the world of things that bother you. You've got to rid your vibration of things that bother you. And when you rid your vibration of things that bother you, no things that bother you can come. Vibration and physical space. Going back and doing things in a new way, even in the same space, again, shows us too how differently things happen when our vibrational space, our knowledge about this, our ability to use it and access it has evolved. And I'm excited to play in a playground now where I can see that very, very vividly. Have a beautiful day. Thanks for being here. Ta-ta.